Hello and welcome back to the Reclaim YouTube channel where we talk productivity tips, calendar hacks, and product updates from the Reclaim team. Today I'm joined by Reclaim co-founder Henry Shapiro to talk a little bit about how Reclaim is different from another calendar app on the market called Motion. We have a lot of users that switch from Motion to Reclaim, and often when users are looking for an app to improve their productivity and better manage their time, there's the question of whether you should choose Reclaim or Motion. So I called in the expert to go over some of the differences between features and capabilities between the two apps so that you can get a better idea of what Reclaim can offer versus Motion and which is better suited to your needs. That being said, Henry, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. For users who are brand new to Reclaim, maybe you could introduce the product and explain a little bit about what Reclaim offers.
So I'm Henry Shapiro. I'm one of the co-founders of Reclaim.ai. And Reclaim is an intelligent calendar assistant. We basically help you to align your work week to the things that you want to get done. And that means your tasks, your routines, your meetings, basically anything that you want to focus on during the week. We kind of help you to make time for it on the calendar, and we automate and kind of orchestrate where that time goes and help you to reschedule it if things change. One of the things that we like to talk about is that, like, in a lot of companies, prioritization tends to be a scheduling problem, and scheduling tends to be a prioritization problem. And so we really believe that if you're, looking to find time with other people, or if you're looking to find time for the things that you need to get done on your calendar, oftentimes the problem is really that, you don't have an assistant to help you sort of prioritize that work and make sure it lands in the right place. And so that's really what Reclaim is there to help you with and help your teams with.
People usually come to the decision of choosing Motion versus Reclaim, trying to better manage their calendar, get more time out of their work week, and better prioritize all the things on their plate. How is Reclaim different that you've heard from users who've switched over from Motion? And how's Reclaim's mission a little different than Motion's?
I'd say one really big difference is that, probably off the bat, is that I think Motion really came into existence to specifically help people with time blocking for tasks. And that's one of the things that we help people with. But we believe that, like, this problem is fairly holistic, and it affects a whole bunch of different kind of jobs to be done on the calendar. And so we've really tried to build more of a platform that helps people to do a lot of little things that they're probably doing manually today on the calendar. Whereas I think Motion's really focused on trying to be sort of like a replacement for your existing calendar. And we've really tried to lean into this idea of being more of an intelligent assistant that works with the calendars and the systems that you already use. And the benefit of that for users is they don't have to necessarily like pick up a whole new calendar or use a whole new calendar client or use a whole new project management system. We're basically just the brain that sort of connects into all of those existing systems of record, and you can continue to use those different, kind of products and surfaces as much as you'd like. So I'd say that's one kind of like big, like, philosophical difference. I think that also, like, a lot of our product, I think, really differs from Motion in the sense that, like, it's born out of our experience, and our experience is really that of, like, very busy middle managers. When Patrick and I started the company, we were coming out of, a very high flying kind of post IPO company, dealing with a lot of problems that, are very familiar to people who've been in those types of scenarios where they're finding that it's just harder and harder to find time with other people in the company to get their work done during the week. A lot of their important stuff is getting pushed into nights and weekends. They're getting burnt out. And like I said earlier, we really felt like that's a problem, not of like being able to use the calendar faster. Like, it's not like the issue is that you can't send calendar invites fast enough. The issue is actually that people just don't have good tools for mapping the priorities that are in their head to the time that they're spending. And so I think, like, we've tried to build that philosophically into the product through things like, stack ranking for your routines and stack ranking for your tasks and, prioritizing your meetings, but also through things like our free busy controls, which kind of help you to keep your time kind of flexible, but also defended, right? So as we see your calendar start to fill up, we'll kind of like lock the time down and mark it as busy, but we still want to give you that time to meet with your colleagues and not fill up your entire calendar with time blocks. Because, I mean, if the problem were as easy as just like fill up your whole calendar, people can do that pretty easily themselves. They can go on their calendar Sunday night and just like block everything out. But we believe that the problem's more complex than that, and that there's more like emotion and sort of human, sort of capital that gets tied up in this that I think we want to make sure the system represents. And then the last thing, I mean, this is what we hear mostly from users who come to us for Motion, is that the experience of using our product versus using Motion's, is that ours tends to be a bit more predictable. Users, we really believe that we have an AI domain name, and we use intelligence to sort of move around your events and make decisions about where you spend your time. But really, if you look at the product, it's a very transparent kind of rules engine for your time. We want people, we believe that people want automation, but they don't want a black box. They don't want to feel like it's so magical that they can't understand why the system's making certain kinds of decisions, or that it keeps them from being able to have control over their calendar, right? And so I think the thing that we kind of hear is just that Reclaim is more sort of predictable, more solid in terms of how it sort of aligns to the types of problems that people are trying to solve, a little less buggy. And I think we offer, on the more of the customer support side of things, I think we offer a better support experience. We work with our customers directly. We talk to, tens of thousands of users over the course of starting the company. We have direct conversations with our users. We take their feedback. We fix their bugs. We like to learn from our users directly. And that goes for, myself and Patrick, my co-founder. We still do a lot of customer support because we believe it's really important to getting this problem right. And I think that's the other reason that people, tend to kind of walk away from Motion and start looking at Reclaim, is they feel like they had a really good experience, not only using the product, but engaging with the company and engaging with the people who built it. And they feel more heard in terms of, what they need out of the product.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into the actual features that Reclaim offers users to help them better manage their time and automate their workflows. How are Reclaim features different than Motion's, and how do Reclaim features offer better solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've tried to kind of offer a platform that has a bunch of different, sort of features that are tailor-made for different kinds of problems that people have in managing their calendars or their time or their own priorities. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we really want people to have the ability to bring the tools that they're already using to bear. We don't want to necessarily be the center of the universe for every single project or task. And we recognize that companies oftentimes, and teams oftentimes have not just one, but many project management solutions that they're using. So, maybe starting with integrations, today we integrate with Asana, Jira, Linear, Todoist, ClickUp, and Google Tasks, right? So we can take your tasks and your projects in from all these different systems, and we can make time for them using our time blocking features. And we synchronize the status of those tasks kind of bidirectionally between the integration source and Reclaim. And what that means is that you can kind of operate in all those existing systems and know that Reclaim is going to sort of make the time that you need. And as time burns down in the calendar, or as you mark the task is done in that integration source, we're going to make sure that your calendar sort of gets cleaned up to reflect kind of the status of the task. And we think that's pretty powerful because it just reduces the friction for starting to adopt this kind of thing. It's already, I think, a pretty big change for people sometimes when they're thinking about moving from a model where they didn't block any time for their tasks or their routines and suddenly are kind of moving towards that. And to also add in, now you have to also switch your project management system and you have to switch your calendar client. It just adds, we think, unnecessary friction to people getting to embrace and feel the benefits of Reclaim. And then, talking a little bit about kind of the automation engine itself. I mean, I think the two big things we think about are sort of flexibility and control. And in terms of flexibility, we offer a whole bunch of different ways for you to kind of tweak how things get scheduled in Reclaim. Your routines, your habits can have different types of ranges. So you can kind of tell us like when you want things to be scheduled. We have different like hour selections that you can use to sort of decide where things get placed in the calendar. But then perhaps most importantly, behind the scenes, we're running millions and millions of simulations against your calendar every single day. And those simulations are what's telling us, basically helping us to predict how busy we think you're going to be. And our goal is to make it so that you get the time on your calendar but you don't necessarily have to have all of your time blocked out to your colleagues. And so you get that kind of nice balance of I'm free and available until my sort of day starts to really fill up, and then Reclaim sort of comes in and locks things down. And then in terms of control, we try to basically give users the ability to override anything that Reclaim puts down for them, right? Like our general philosophy is we try to make as smart of decisions as we can about where your time block should go. But ultimately, we think like you know best in the moment. So if you tell us that like something should happen at 3 p.m. and not at 1 p.m. and you move an event to that time, we're just going to let that change happen. If you delete an event from the past that you say like, hey, I didn't really actually do this thing, we're going to auto reschedule it to the future. And so there's all of these different ways that you can kind of give Reclaim instructions on the fly, again, using the exact same tools you already use, using Google Calendar, using Slack. You can use our own UI if you'd like. But we try to kind of give you these like really easy ways to kind of make these sort of little manual adjustments and make decisions that override, whatever we've done automatically for you.
That's a really big one because Reclaim isn't replacing anything. It sort of fits into what you're already doing to optimize your time and help you organize your priorities and make sure that you're getting the important things done. Reclaim also has the Google Workspace Marketplace add-on. Let's talk a little bit about that because that's a really powerful addition to the workflow.
I mean, I think that another kind of example of how we try to help you to work where you already do is this Google Calendar and Gmail add-on that we have that basically allows you to see all of your Reclaim managed like tasks and habits and smart one-on-ones and scheduling links all from within Google Calendar. And anytime you click on events that are, Reclaim managed, you can have all those controls and knobs and dials that Reclaim offers right within Google Calendar. So you don't have to worry about, again, adopting a whole new calendar client or using a totally different app. And the same is true of our Slack integration, where you have all these different controls over the things that Reclaim has made time for on the calendar.
And on that note of integrations and adaptability to existing workflows, Reclaim does offer a native Slack integration with status sync to update your status according to what you're working on in your calendar automatically, better communicating your availability and your unavailability, and creating transparency around what you're busy with to your team, but others in general is a big part of Reclaim as well. So tell us a little about that.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is, we have a lot of teams increasingly who are starting to think about, as we're either going remote or hybrid, or even if you're in an office, like how do we use Slack and how do we use different kinds of signals to indicate when we're available and when we're not? And how do we communicate context without having to go and like email people or message people or ask them what they're doing? And so, one of the really powerful ways that we see companies doing that is using our Slack status sync feature. And that feature basically allows you to set different statuses for different categories of events that we detect automatically. And so if you're like in a personal commitment or a personal event and you want to be on Do Not Disturb and you want people to know that you're in some kind of personal event, you can put up a message and an emoji and a Do Not Disturb status that communicates that. If you like to be, available for others to maybe send you a message when you're in a team meeting, but you want people to know that you're in a team meeting in case they think twice before messaging you, you can set your status for that. We basically give you all of these different controls, and we give you control for setting your status when you're when you're outside your working hours. And so it's really powerful for teams where like you're working across time zones, you don't necessarily know what time zone a person is in, and it's fairly easy to just look at their status and see that like, hey, they're outside their working hours and they're on Do Not Disturb. And so if you want to send them a message, they're probably not going to get it until they're back at their desk.
Let's pivot over to habits because that is Reclaim's most popular feature and one that is a little bit different than how Motion approaches calendar management, where they're focused on more of a task system. Reclaim automates scheduling regular routines, both personal and work routines that you want to defend time for regularly. Such an important part of creating that work-life balance. So while you're making time to focus on your tasks and projects that are always changing, you also are defending time on your calendar for your routines, whether they're personal or work, things you want to get done on a regular basis. Something that Motion doesn't really address. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in Motion, they have a concept of tasks, and they do have a concept of recurring tasks, which would sort of be like somewhat similar to our what we would call habits. I think for us, like the benefit of thinking about routines and to-dos independently is that routines are the kind of thing that like you kind of want them to be considered a little differently from your task work. Maybe I'll take a practical example. Lunch is a very popular routine that people have, right? And if you're in a system where you're considering lunch as a recurring task, that's a little bit weird, because ultimately it's like, yeah, it's a task, but it's also the kind of thing that like, if you don't get it each day, you're probably not going to be very productive in getting your other work done. And so we've tried to sort of build these two concepts independently and prioritize them independently so that you can tell us, so taking that practical example, you can tell us, hey, every day, Reclaim, I need you to make sure that I get lunch, some time to catch up on email, some time to exercise, and then you can schedule all my tasks. And then you can schedule these other habits, these lower priority habits, these more aspirational routines that I want if I have some extra time. But if not, that's okay. I won't cry about it. And so I think that's kind of the benefit of how we're thinking about this problem is you can stack rank your habits and your tasks independently, and you can tell us specifically that there are habits that are very important for you to complete every single day so that your tasks don't end up kind of punting out things that really, really shouldn't be punted out. And I think the way Motion thinks about this is really like everything's a task. And not only do I think that's like not quite the right nomenclature to describe like things that are actually really important to people, like routines that they kind of need each day, it also doesn't really let you have that level of control where you can kind of say like, no, I can't really get anything done until these routines are done. And that's, I think, we think a better model for how humans actually operate. They sort of need certain things to happen every day. And if they don't happen, it really significantly impacts their productivity and their ability to kind of show up in the best light. And the same thing is true of like breaks. I mean, I think there's a lot of discussion in time blocking around like, everything on your calendar should have a purpose. And we definitely believe that too. But another example of a purpose on your calendar is a purpose to do nothing. We actually think it's really important for people to have, some people call it negative space on the calendar, which is basically like explicitly blocked out time that is basically just there for you to like decompress. Like you've been in 3 meetings in a row. Maybe you have energy to catch up on your email. Maybe you have energy to catch up on Slack. Maybe literally the only thing you have energy to go do is like go walk around the house for like 5 minutes, or like go walk around the block for, an hour. Like those are the kinds of things that you can create habits for those kinds of routines. But we also want to give you that power to sort of insert these breaks, especially after long stints of meetings. And so we have a couple of features around this. One is this travel time feature that will automatically block time for you to kind of move from location to location. So anytime we see an event with a physical location on it, we'll automatically add some fixed blocks of time. If we see a flight, we'll add bigger blocks of time to make sure you have time to get to the airport and go through security and all that, and get a cab when you land. And then, of course, we have this thing called buffer time or decompression time that is really about giving you time after those meetings to sort of like take a break, take a breather, take a bio break, whatever you need to do. And again, I think this is like, one of the traps that I think people fall into with time blocking, and I think Motion in some ways encourages this a little bit too much, is they overdo it. They really try to like get super pedantic about like, I'm going to take every single minute and make it a specific thing. I understand sort of the instinct to do that, but I think that sometimes it kind of sets you up for failure in a way. It kind of makes you feel really disappointed and guilty when you don't fulfill on that plan. And so I think things like breaks and routines are a great way to sort of introduce yourself to that, because it's a more natural way that humans kind of think about their days. And then you can start to layer in your task work. You can start to layer in, the things that you want to get done that are more like large chunks of work that have a definite due date. But we really try to kind of build up to that in the product. And we want to sort of encourage you to think more about like, well, what are some regular things you need to get done? What are some breaks that you need? Do you have your personal events represented on your work calendar so that you can get that time blocked out? like just the basics, and then from there you can see how you feel about like moving up to level 2 of like blocking time for tasks, or level 3 for blocking time for your recurring, one-on-one meetings. So yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing to highlight that Reclaim does differently, where you have this hustle culture mentality of, more is more, and getting more done every day is sort of the goal of productivity, whereas the actually sustainable solution is creating that work-life balance and defending time for breaks and healthy routines and things that help improve your focus and productivity in the long run. Which I think more and more companies are also seeing the value in and prioritizing. And Reclaim really has that goal of bringing that to more teams.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's all kind of a balance. I mean, even setting aside life or kind of the personal, professional side of it, even within companies, you need that kind of space. Like, you can't just have a company where everyone is heads down all the time, because that's not really a sustainable way to use your team, and it's not going to make people feel like they're collaborating with each other. And simultaneously, you can't have people in meetings all day. Like, there's a balance for sure. And I think any company or any team that says that they're like completely anti meetings or completely, anti, well, there's very few teams that say they're anti-focus time, but like people who don't want, people to kind of get that time down or don't feel like that's important. I mean, the reality is, I think it's always kind of a balance, because one sort of is there to help you, recharge in the form of being with other people, and the other is there to help you recharge in the form of like doing work by yourself that is important to your job or important to your life. And to that end, I mean, I think the next thing I would probably call out here is really around like meeting management, because I think that everything we've talked about so far is really about like time for you, time for your tasks, time for your team's tasks, time for your routines, time for your breaks. But meetings are a really, really big component of they're a big component of two things. One is they kind of are the positive space that determines how much flexibility we have to do heads down work. You can kind of think of someone's work week as, 40 hours minus the number of recurring meetings that they have. And that's the remainder is what they really have to like spend on important work. And so we really focus on those recurring meetings in particular. And we really think a lot about, in particular, smart one-on-one meetings, which are, basically the most prominent form of meeting, no matter what level you are in the organization. If you're a junior, engineer, or a super senior VP or a CEO, you've probably got at least one-on-one on the calendar. I think on average, we found that our users have like 5 or 6 per week. And so they're very, very common meetings. They tend to take up a lot of our time. They tend to get rescheduled pretty aggressively. But they're really important. Like, they're really important touch points for managers to stay in touch with their team. They're important touch points for peers to stay in touch with one another. But they're kind of challenging to manage. And they're challenging to manage because oftentimes the goal of a one-on-one is not that you meet at the same time on Tuesday at 2 p.m. The goal is, I want to meet with Elizabeth roughly every 7 days, 5 to 7 days. I want to make sure that Elizabeth and I get to talk every few days. And so I don't care if, that happens on Tuesday or Monday or Thursday. I just want it to happen. And I want to make sure it happens at a time that works for both of us, both in terms of like our actual availability and in terms of like our preferences. Maybe Elizabeth doesn't want to have meetings at, 4 p.m. on a Friday, right? And we want people to be able to communicate those preferences. And so what our Smart One-on-Ones feature does is it allows you to basically convert your existing one-on-one meetings. And this is something that, as far as I know, Motion doesn't offer at all today, is any kind of like recurring meeting management. And you can basically give those one-on-ones, will automatically pull in kind of the existing schedule, and you can give those one-on-ones different types of preferences. Each of the folks in the meeting can determine kind of what they want their meeting hours to be. So kind of what days work for them, what days don't work for them. And then Reclaim will automatically schedule the meeting. It'll try to find, if you give it, like, if you're like, hey, ideally we do this on Wednesdays at 1 p.m., we'll try to find that time. And if that time's always available, it may never move. But if one of you goes on vacation on Wednesday and blocks out your calendar, if the meeting gets interrupted, if someone gets sick, all you have to do is either like block time over the event, decline the event, or use one of our like reschedule features that's in our Google Calendar add-on or in our planner or in Slack. And you'll be able to just automatically find the next best time for the meeting. And Reclaim will just do that without you having to think about it. So it's a really nice way of like reducing the toil and the time. And a really like common example that we think about is like, you're going out of town, you're getting ready for vacation, you've got a bunch of one-on-ones the next week, and you blocked out your whole calendar that week, but you didn't move your one-on-ones. You didn't like go and reschedule them. And now you get back from vacation and it's a week later, and you look at everyone's calendars and you're like, oh crap, now I can't meet with these people for like probably a whole other week because their calendars are totally full. And so Reclaim really helps you to get ahead of that. Like you can go block out your calendar like 6 weeks in advance, and Reclaim's already taking care of like making sure all your one-on-one meetings are like at the next best time. And we try to do other little things, like we space out the time a little more intelligently. So if you just met on Friday, we're not going to put another one-on-one on Monday, right? We kind of know that the goal is to kind of space out the time a bit more. And so this is a really powerful feature that we're seeing a lot of teams use, and especially managers use, to kind of help manage those many one-on-one meetings that they need to have around the organization. And again, you kind of get that blend of like automation and control. And then for your more kind of one-off meetings, for meetings that are more about like, I need to find time with a customer, or I need to find time with another teammate, or my colleagues and I all need to find time to meet with this one person, we have a scheduling links feature that's really powerful. I'd say one of the big points of differentiation from Motion here, and there's lots and lots of features in the market that allow you to send a link with your availability, is we give you a lot more control over the prioritization of how meetings get scheduled. One of the worst experiences that you can offer to somebody is to send them an email and say, hey, I'm really excited to meet, pick the soonest day that works for you. And you send them a link and they open it up and there's like no availability for 3 weeks. And the reality is, under the covers, there's probably a bunch of crap on your calendar that's like stuff you would move to make room for that customer. But like, because you didn't check your calendar first, or you didn't check your scheduling link first, now you're kind of a little embarrassed about it. And so we have this concept that we've introduced, and we're really the only product in the market that I'm aware of that is approaching the problem this way, where we take all of that context and information that we know about your priorities, and we use that to deliver this feature called priority links. And priority links are links that the person who gets them doesn't know if they're priority or not, and that's by design. We don't want you to, necessarily show favoritism through links. But when you send someone a priority link, what they will see is, in addition to all of your actually free time, they'll see any of your tasks, your habits, your breaks, your smart one-on-ones, basically anything that Reclaim has blocked sort of flexible time for will show as available. And that means that they get your maximum availability. If they pick a location that requires like you to travel from place to place, we'll automatically make sure that, we only offer up slots that offer you the travel time that you need. And then in addition to that, we have the ability for users to pick from multiple durations. So another very common example is you're meeting with somebody and you're like, hey, I'm excited to meet. Or maybe they want to meet with you is maybe a better example. They want to meet with you and you're not really sure if they want like 15 minutes of your time or 45 minutes of your time or 30 minutes of your time. And you're kind of okay giving them any of those options, but you don't know what link to send them. With Reclaim, you can send a single link that has multiple durations. And that really puts the power back in the attendee's hand. They can basically say like, okay, if I want to meet with Elizabeth and I want to meet really soon, I could take this 15-minute slot tomorrow. Or if I want to meet with Elizabeth, but I want to spend like 45 minutes, I'm okay waiting a couple days and I'll take this slot later. So it gives them the ability to sort of suggest what priority they think the meeting is, and also really suggest how much time they think they need. And that's really different from how I think a lot of others, folks in this space have kind of thought about this problem. So again, that theme of like flexibility, control, prioritization, that's really we're trying to bring all of that into how we think about meetings, in addition to how we think about, your own time. Yeah.
And on that note of sort of flexibility and control, let's quickly talk about calendar sync and connected calendars, because Reclaim really built out options for how users want Reclaim to check their availability and balance their time across schedules, which is really important, especially when people are juggling multiple schedules, whether that's multiple client schedules or different work schedules or a family calendar. You have your limited hours in a day, and when you are balancing to-dos across different calendars, you do have to approach it a little bit differently, and Reclaim really aims to optimize that. Maybe tell us a little bit about how Reclaim's calendar sync approaches that.
The one thing I'd say in calendar sync is like a lot of companies, or not a lot, I mean, there's a couple of companies that have kind of looked at this problem of like blocking events from your personal calendar and your work calendar. I would say that we think of calendar sync as a real platform capability. And what I mean by that is it's just like so much else in the product, it's a rules engine. It's you saying, not just my personal calendar, but it could be like a side gig calendar. If you're a consultant, it could be like 6 other client calendars. And the goal is basically unified availability. That's what you want. You want everyone who looks at a given calendar to see your true availability without seeing all of the sensitive details of those events. So to that end, we not only give you really flexible options around privacy, you can go everything from communicating just enough context to no context to all the context. You can tell us what kind of calendar you're syncing over so that we sort of properly categorize and color code all the stuff properly, or all the events in their kind of appropriate categories. But I'd say more importantly, and probably most importantly, we give you the ability to set up multiple different syncs. And that means that you can have a sync that goes from personal to work and then work to personal. If maybe you want your spouse or your family to know when you're busy for work events, you can sync your family calendar, you can sync your side gig calendar. We just give you a lot more control over that feature. And there's a couple of other like little intelligent bits of how we do the job, right? So for example, if there's an event that you've been invited to on your personal calendar, but you haven't RSVP'd to it, we're not going to treat that time as busy until you RSVP yes or maybe. And so we try not to like just like dumbly like sync over all the events. We try to really think about like, well, what's the nuance of this? Like why would this be really bad for people? And what would make this a really uncomfortable experience? And so we try to like think about those use cases and think about ways we can make it more human. Is maybe a good way to put it.
One of the things that stands out with Reclaim is also how involved and invested the team is in the user experience. Obviously, you and Patrick, the other co-founder of Reclaim, are both directly involved with users. You're presenting the product, you're answering questions. We have a live support chat with the team where you can directly ask the team questions about Reclaim and any problems that you have. We have an extensive help center and YouTube videos, and are always having an open conversation with our users, which is something that really stands out as a brand, and that has been highlighted by our users as well in their reviews. On a more practical term, in terms of pricing and support, how does Reclaim differ from Motion? Obviously, Motion only offers a paid plan, whereas Reclaim has a more flexible pricing structure, plus all the support that Reclaim offers users once they're getting started, obviously adapting a new product and working it into their workflow. I think that's something that's always on the forefront of the Reclaim team, is how we can improve the experience and help users get the most out of the product.
Yeah, in terms of support, I mean, we, from day one, we have believed that this is a very early inning of a brand new market that people are just starting to kind of figure out. Companies are just waking up to this reality that they need to arm their employees with better platforms and tools to manage their time and their priorities. And we believe that products like ours deserve great support. They deserve great customer service. They deserve to, the people who use them and try them out need a hand. And so I'm really proud to say that like from day one, we've offered in-product chat where you can come and talk to the team. Oftentimes you will probably end up talking to myself or Patrick, my co-founder. I think we've resolved somewhere on the order of like 28,000 tickets over the past couple years. And so we take this stuff really seriously, and not only because it's good for users and customers, like it's good for them to help them understand the product and solve the problem, but selfishly, it's great for us. Like we learn a lot from our users. We learn a lot from the feedback that we get. When we roll things out, we get to hear immediately how it's affecting people positively and negatively. It feeds our roadmap. And so I don't really think you can build a product in this space and not have a really close relationship with your users. And I don't know necessarily if we'll offer this forever, but I think it's one of those things that people really appreciate, particularly coming from Motion, where there really isn't any interface for you to talk to the team, much less, the founders of the product or people who can, do something about your feedback. And then, on our help center, I mean, we've we've really tried to document as much of the product and the behavior as possible, because we think that these types of systems, again, people want to understand them. They want to treat this like any system, right? It's like if you were making a repair on, it's like, you don't want to use a system that you're depending on every single day and every single week without really understanding how it works. I mean, it's great if something just magically does the right thing, but when it doesn't do the thing you expect, or when it behaves in a way that you can't fully understand and you can't look under the hood and be like, why did it do this? That's kind of challenging. And so we really try to give people a lot of content and help guides that kind of help to explain the product as transparently as we possibly can. And then to that end, I mean, to the point of it being like a fairly early market and fairly early days, I also don't think you can have a successful product in this market and in this space and not offer a free plan. Like, I don't really understand the idea of having a solely paid plan where you can't even really try out the product for more than a couple weeks without ponying up some money, especially ponying up, I don't know, what is it, like $30 a month or something like that, like almost $400 a year. I mean, eventually I would love for us to get to the place where we can charge more money for the product than we do today, and where the value we're providing goes well beyond what we're doing. But I think we've kind of looked at other products in this market, and we've looked at the price point that we think is really fair for what we're providing, fair in terms of value and also fair in terms of the economics of it. And we think, it's really important for us to have something that's affordable, particularly for small teams and for individuals who want to use the product. And B, we want to have a plan that allows people to sort of, follow their own maturity curve. Some people get really excited, and in the first 7 days, they purchase a paid plan of Reclaim, and that's awesome. Some people, it takes, a few weeks of kind of trying out this new concept of like making time for the routines, syncing their calendar events, trying out task time blocking. And once they start to kind of feel the benefits of it, maybe that's 3 months later, they'll come back to us and they'll want something that we do that's paid. And ultimately, both with, support and our help content and our commercial plans, we're really playing what we think of as like the long game here. We want to build long-term customer trust, long-term user trust and loyalty. We don't view our job as to bring you in and convert you within 14 days or else. Our job is to win you over little by little by little, and maybe you didn't like us a year ago and you'll come back a year later and try us out. And that's the value of having a free plan that anyone can kind of step back into. And for what it's worth, if you ever reach out to us over support and ask for a trial, I think we've got about 100% hit rate on saying, yes, you can have another trial. So we try to be fairly generous with how we think about earning that trust and earning that loyalty from users.
I think another good thing to mention here at the end is that we do have a switching discount if you are a Motion user and looking for an alternative solution or just want to try Reclaim out.
Yeah, I mean, you can switch to Reclaim and see the difference for yourself. Yes, we are we're big believers in you've already sunk some cost into a product like Motion. We want to help make the switch to Reclaim as economically feasible as possible. So we offer a 20% discount off your first 6 months, and that's basically for any of our plans. And so yeah, if you send us a copy of that canceled Motion receipt or canceled Motion invoice, and we take a look and we say it's all hunky dory, we'll send you a coupon code.
Thank you, Henry, for sitting down with me to talk a little bit about Motion and Reclaim and some of the differences between the apps, since we do have so many users that are considering them when they do look for a calendar management tool. Like Henry said, we do offer a 20% discount, and we'd love to have you try the product and see the difference for yourself. I'll have everything linked down in the description if you were interested in switching over. Hopefully this video was helpful in giving a little bit of perspective about how Reclaim is different than Motion, some of the features that Reclaim offers that Motion doesn't. If you did find this video helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more tips and interviews and webinars. That's it from us today. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the description for more relevant content, and we will see you in our next video. Bye.